Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video. Today's video is using the leaf circle stencil from Hero Arts, as well as this artichoke arrangement stamp set for the sentiment. We'll come back to that. Basically, what we're doing today is we are doing an trapped emboss resist with a stencil. So this is just another use that you can use, get another use out of your stencils, which you guys know I'm a big fan of. I left in, this is such a fast technique, I left in all of the ink blending because otherwise my video was like 10 minutes long and I knew you guys would be like, nah fam, that's too short of a Kelly video. So basically I'm going to be doing some ink blending. I'm using my reactive inks and my brushes, my Hero Arts brushes are already prepped for those colors. That's why I chose to use those. And I'm just doing kind of a random pattern because I know I'm going to be clear embossing on top of it. I did this technique with stamps as like the second video I ever did. And that video is only like 18 minutes long and it's not edited. I just talked my whole way through it. You could probably barely hear it because I didn't even have a good microphone. I literally talked the whole way through it. I did not even do a voiceover. It's not edited. It's raw footage. So if you're new to my channel and you're looking for a good laugh, I will link it below so you can go back and watch that channel and how to do the same technique with stamps instead of stencils. But when I first saw this stencil, that was the first thing that came to mind, is how pretty it would look with the, kind of ink blended colors with the leaves and like a really dramatic background. And the best way that I could think to get that done is to do this particular technique. Also, if you are like, I love that artichoke arrangement stamp set, and I would love to see what you do with that. I am over on the Hero Arts YouTube channel today with a video using that set and some liquid watercolors and Copics. So if 15 minutes is not enough Kelly for you in one day, you can head over to the Hero Arts channel and get 15 more minutes. You're welcome. So it's just a really fun way to add a lot of color. And I think that any techniques that are going to kind of give us more mileage, I could have done this and gotten really pretty results with blended colors using a stencil in a traditional way. But it makes it more challenging to get that really dramatic background. And so that's why using the clear embossing powder is such a great way to kind of just trap that color and protect it. Here you can see I was trying to get my red down and I didn't buff it off and start off the page, and so I have kind of this blotch there. I was able to blend it out a little bit, but it doesn't really matter because I'm going to be covering up so much of this background. And I like to do my colors twice. This is true whether I'm using reactive inks, whether I'm using distress inks, whether I'm using other people's dye inks, like other companies' dye inks to ink blend with. I just feel like going over everything twice gives me a much better blend. And so that is why I choose to do that. It just depends on how rich of a color you want or how well you want them blended. This particular technique does not require you to blend well by any means because you're not going to see the whole piece. You're only going to see parts of it. So not really as important to spend a lot of time with the blending. Just really more important to kind of get the color on. So once I am done doing all of my ink blending, this is a super important step. Please don't skip it. Make sure your background is dry. Whether you're doing this with stamps or stencils, make sure your background is dry because otherwise your embossing powder is going to stick everywhere because your background is wet and you're just going to end up with like a whole big mess and be so dissatisfied with your results. So I just take my heat tool to it. You could, of course, wait a acceptable amount of time in between, but then I always test mine. So once I think it's dry enough, I'm just going to go in with my embossing powder. This is the clear Hero Arts embossing powder, and I'm just going to sprinkle it kind of all over my background to make sure it's not sticking. It isn't, and then so I can move on to the technique. First, I'm going to show you what not to do. You're welcome. So the first time I did it, this is a new embossing ink pad, so it's very juicy. So the first time I did it, I just pushed it down right on top of it, and what I found is it squeezed underneath the stencil. And so that was very not cool. This would probably be fine as like a messier background, but it wasn't clean, and that's what I wanted. And so I just did it again because, I don't know, Eric says I'm a perfectionist. I just feel like I'm tenacious, you know? I think that that's a good thing to have. So this time around, I am going to go in with my anti-static tool and put that all over my background. Then I will put my stencil in place. And then I'm going to go back in to apply the embossing powder. This time around, lesson learned, this time around, I only tapped the embossing powder on top of it. The embossing ink pad on top of it. I didn't push down. I just tapped it because, like I said, this is brand new, so it's pretty wet. And I didn't want it to squeeze under, so I just tapped it. And then I just went in with like a clean brush. You could use a clean foam pad, from any other kind of ink blending tool. And then I didn't even like re-ink it in the pad. I just used what was left sitting on top of the stencil to kind of get it in all of its parts, just treating it almost like any other ink. And this worked really well for me. I was very happy with the results for this. So once that is done, I'm going to go ahead and remove my stencil. Here you can see the clear embossing ink that's on there. And then I am going to get myself all set up with my clear embossing powder here. You can use any color, but in order for it to be a trapped emboss resist and let those colors shine through underneath, you do need to use clear. Otherwise, you're going to be covering up those beautiful colors and leaving the color in the background. So in order to trap them so that you can still see them underneath, you need to use a clear embossing powder. But this technique will work with any, if you didn't want to do the ink blending and you wanted to use a stencil to just emboss with, this technique would also work for that. So here, I wish I could have found my tweezers, but I didn't know where they were. So because I use a repositionable adhesive on the back of my stencils, I did get a couple of little spots in the center where my embossing powder stuck where I didn't want it to. That's why I was going in with the adhesive eraser. And don't do what I did. Get your tweezers. Don't hold it in your hand like I did, because at one point it did get a little too hot, a little questionable. And you'll see I end up having to like drop it. I don't have asbestos fingers. I should have used my tweezers, but I didn't want to take the time to find them. But nonetheless, look at the magic of the embossing powder. Like, look at how pretty it is. When it melts, and I don't really care what color it is, metallics are really pretty, but anytime embossing powder melts, like, I don't think as a crafter I will ever get over just like the magic of it and how just beautiful I think it is. So clear is pretty easy to tell when it's all melted and dry, or all melted and smooth, because it's not white anymore. It's genuinely clear. So now that that part's done, here's where we're going to do the resist portion of it. The resist portion of it is going to be black for me, because I like black. I like bold black, and I run into a little bit of problems with that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But so one of the ways that you can do it, which is the least messy way, is to go in with a brush and then just add it over top of it, and then go in with a damp, just a slightly damp baby wiper paper towel and wipe off the embossed parts. But this is never dark enough for me. It's like a gray, and I'm never happy with that. I want a black, like a true black. So I am just going to take my ink pad direct to the paper and just kind of smush it all around there. I will use the brush to kind of make sure that I get it all in like the nooks and crannies of the embossing. Here I've just got a baby wipe so I can hold it in my hand, but this is just to, swooshing over it to make sure that I've got it all in there. And then it looks crazy hot mess. I know that, that, we can see it here together. But then I'm going to go in, like I said, with that damp baby wipe. Mine's not super wet. So it's not taking off all of it, but it is taking off the majority of it. So I'm just going to go in and wipe it a couple of times. Obviously, the reactive ink all reacts with water, which means the black does as well. So you can lift up some of the background color while you're trying to get it off of the embossing so that it's not maybe as dark or as rich. And I wasn't, like, by the time that it was said and done, I love the color, like the actual color that's trapped, stunning, beautiful. These reactive inks are so bright and I love that. But the background was a little bit kind of too pale for me. I wasn't real happy with the way that it was looking. And be careful how many times you're wiping over it with a baby wipe, just because we're just working on regular cardstock. It's not made to take a lot of moisture. But because I wasn't happy with the way the background looked, I just went in and did it again. Smeared my black ink right over top of it, and then went in with the brush to make sure that I was getting in all of the little areas. And then I'll just do the same thing with my baby wipe. I will go back in. This technique is a smidge messy, so you may want to wear gloves. But then this time, when I'm going in, instead of just wiping everything, I'm trying to be more selective about just wiping the embossed areas and getting the black ink off of that part instead of the background. It is a little bit more time consuming, but I am happier with the results that way because I like my background to be dark. Another way that you can ensure that your background is dark is to go in with a Copic marker. This, to me, I mean, I like a dark black, but this is too time consuming for me. And you run the risk of coloring over your embossings because it's an alcohol marker. So I didn't continue. I was merely doing it to show you. That's not something that I continued to do. I just left the ink and just kind of embraced it as it was. For the sentiment, I wanted to add a little something something, and so I decided to use the circles. What are they? Frame cuts? Is that what they are? In order to have two different layers. So I picked this happy birthday sentiment and made sure it fit inside my circle. And then I'm going to heat emboss this with white. With gold, because I'm going to use a gold glitter paper, because I don't know, I just like it for fall. Here, I started to grab, this is still my old backup, I still have it, is the bag for the anti-static, though I do prefer the cottontail brush, but I couldn't find it right away, and so I went to use the old method, and then I realized that the cottontail one was just in the lower drawer, because God forbid I should put anything away where it goes. It doesn't have a place. I'm kidding you. Like, there is no place for the items in my craft room. There's just none. Which I'm very excited for my sisters to come first weekend in October, craft room redo. And then maybe after that, I'll show you guys my craft room if you're interested in seeing it. Not until I get it in order, because right now I'm basically living in a hoarder room. But yeah, once it gets done, I will be, and everything has a place, I will be excited. So here I'm using the Hero Arts gold embossing powder, and again, magic. I think it's so pretty, especially the metallics. And then I'm going to go through and die cut my smallest circle for my sentiment, and then just a slightly larger one out of this gold glitter paper. Because I like gold for fall. I just do. I trimmed down the leaf piece just a smidge so that I could put it frame it with a true black, the pitch black, to be perfectly honest. And then I didn't love kind of the white edge it left, because remember, this cardstock started off white. So I didn't love that. So I just took my black Copic marker and went around the edges super quickly just so that it would blend into the background a little bit better. Totally unnecessary step unless you're like me. And if you're like me, then do it. It'll make you happier. So I decided to pop this up with some foam tape. This particular foam tape is from Picket Fence. It comes in an extra wide roll. It's very large, but it is great for popping up large pieces. I really like it for that. So here I'm just going to adhere that to my card base. Hopefully straight. I'm trying to use them grid lines, but sometimes it just don't work out. So then once I'm happy with where it goes, I'm going to go ahead and adhere that down. And like I said, it's popped up. I thought about popping up the sentiment even further, but I decided that would probably be a little bit too much. So I'm going to adhere first my gold circle flat, and then I will adhere my black circle flat as well. just right over top of that. And then my little black circle felt like it needed something a little bit extra, like a gem or a jewel or a pearl or a sequin or something. So I used these hero pearls in gold, very similar to like Nuvo drops. But they happened to be the right color that I needed. And so it was the first time that I was using them, and I started to put it on the project, and then I was like, nah, I should test this out so I know how fast they come out. And I'm glad that I did, so I could kind of get a feel for it. And then I just put a couple around the sentiment where I would put sequins or gems or jewels, anything else, just to kind of fill in that space a little bit so it didn't seem so open. On the top and bottom, it just felt like it needed a little something. And then that is pretty much it. That's the whole card. So like I said, if you would like to check out my old video, I will link that below. If you would like to check out the new video I have on the Hero Arts blog, I will link that as well. And that's it. So thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate you. I hope you had a wonderful weekend, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.